Hello, welcome to Livy's Ranger Garage. On this YouTube channel, I hope to produce a series of videos teaching you about automotive electrical systems. We will cover basic electricity, how to troubleshoot electrical problems, and how to add and modify circuits in your vehicle. These videos are primarily aimed at owners of Ford Rangers, Explorers, and Bronco 2s, but most of the principles here will also apply to other vehicles. My name is Eric, and this channel is named for my dog Livy. I hope you find these videos useful. Thanks for watching.
Today's lesson, rebuilding a manual locking hub. Today we're going to rebuild a couple of worn hubs. These came out of a local junkyard, and I'm just getting them cleaned up so that I can use them as spares in the truck. First thing, take out this Phillips screw, which may be behind an adhesive label, and once the screw is removed, you can remove the operating handle. Next, we must remove this retaining ring that holds the interior parts of the hub in place. It's down in there under all that grease. Just dig most of the grease out with a rag and your finger, or maybe a screwdriver or something like that, and you will see the retaining ring down in there. It sits in some grooves in the housing, and you'll need a hooked instrument, maybe a tiny bent screwdriver or some sort of a hook-shaped pick, and you need to get behind the ring at one side near one of the ends, and then slowly pry it out and work your way around until the whole ring is free of the groove. There, I've got it started, and I'm most of the way around. And now we can pull the ring out. Once that retaining ring is free, you should be able to push the rest of the components out of the hub. This particular hub, I later found out, had a burr. It was raised up, and everything was catching on it. So it took me a little bit of fiddling to get everything straightened out and get it out of there. But just be patient with it and work your way around. You may have to work the components side to side like you see me doing with the screwdriver. Or you should just be able to push them from the front side, and you'll see that here in just a second. And now you see the components coming out. I'll try to keep them in order on my finger here as they come out. There's one little splined ring that stayed in there. We'll see that in a minute. and the last spring. At this point, you may want to take a picture so you remember the order that the parts go back together and the orientation. Some of them may look like you could flip them around, but they shouldn't be. So everything has to go back in the same order and the same orientation. There I was showing you an O-ring, a seal that goes around the actuator where it goes through the hole on the front side of the hub and engages the handle. At this point, take some brake cleaner or your favorite cleaning goop and some rags and clean everything up real good. Get all the dirt, all the old grease out, make sure everything's clean. If you see some burrs that made it hard to get things apart, you may want to smooth them off a little bit with a file or a little bit of sandpaper, and then make sure you get all your filings and sanding grit and everything cleaned up so that everything's perfectly clean when it goes back together. Now I'm setting that one aside. I have this other one already cleaned, and we'll use that to reassemble. So here are all the parts laid out. One more thing I'm going to do is take this other retaining ring off of here. This assembly has 3 parts, or actually 4 parts. A retaining ring, a brass ring that slides and rotates on a hub, and a thin shim in between the brass ring and the hub. This retaining ring is spiral shaped, but otherwise it comes off just like the other one we took out of the hub. And there's the shim. So that goes on, and then the brass ring. I already have these cleaned, so I'm going to reassemble them so that you can see how it goes back together. Find one end of your spiral retaining ring and separate it a little bit and place it in the groove, and then just keep working your way around until the whole ring is in the groove and seated properly. I'm going to use a little bit of motor oil to lubricate those parts. I maybe could have put a little bit of red grease on there before I put that back together, but I think for this part a little bit of motor oil will be fine. So I put a few drops in there and just work that brass ring back and forth and let the oil work its way into the mating surfaces. The whole hub assembly does not take a lot of lubrication. Do not pack it. If you pack the whole hub full of grease, it will not work properly. So just a light coat of grease or oil on all the parts and your hub will be fine. For the rest of the assembly, I'm going to use my favorite red grease. This is the same grease I use when packing wheel bearings. So I'll put a thin layer on all the parts that rotate or slide in the assembly. Here you see me working it on the splines on this little hub. And then we'll work some into the interior splines on the hub. Those interior splines engage with the axle shaft when it comes through from the spindle. Now we'll take this little actuator piece and the O-ring, and I'll put a little bit of grease on the O-ring and stick it on the actuator. You don't want to forget this. This is one of the prime pieces that keeps dirt and water out of your hub. Oops. I dropped a little splined ring. Just pick it up, check for damage, clean it off, and give it a light coating of grease because it also rotates and slides within the assembly. Don't forget this plastic splined ring. And finally, a thin coat of grease on all the internal splines in the hub housing. That's all you need, just a thin layer. Once you have the parts stacked, you can carefully lower the housing down over them and then pick the assembly up and try to get all the parts back in there. And you see that didn't work very well, so I'm just going to work them into place individually with my fingers. If a piece isn't sliding in there properly, don't force it. You don't want to raise any burrs or sharp edges in there that could interfere with it operating later on. If it doesn't work right, just pull it back out and see what's wrong, or make sure it's lined up and going in straight. If a piece is cocked sideways, it will not go in properly. There's some pretty close tolerances in there. And there you see the actuator sticking through the hole on the front side of the hub housing. Now, we'll put the rest of this in here. And work it down into place. Now, on the back of the operating handle and the face of the hub, you'll see the face of the hub has a groove and the handle has a little tang that fits in that groove. That's what gives you a stop when you're locking or unlocking the hub, so you don't turn the handle too far. So place the handle on there and test it to see if it works properly. It is possible to put this together so that it doesn't work, and you may need to take the parts out and rotate them slightly so that you can get that to where the handle operates in its proper range of rotation and actually makes the hub actuate. And just a little bit of coercion occasionally, just to make sure everything's seated properly. And you can see my handle doesn't rotate. So now I get to take it apart and reorientate things until it works. I haven't found any trick yet to getting it assembled right the first time. The only thing that does that is pure luck. So don't be afraid to take it apart, reorient the parts, and put it back together again until you feel it operate properly and engage and disengage when you turn the handle on the front. Think of the operating handle and the front of the operating piece that comes through the front of the hub housing have mating five-sided, a lug and a hole, or a recess. The recess is on the handle, and the little five-sided lug is on that plastic operator that sticks through the front of the hub housing. So you get about 5 shots to get this oriented so that it actually operates. And finally, I got it. So it works just fine. And you can feel it. When you turn that knob back and forth, you can feel it pushing the pieces and engaging and disengaging. Finally, just a little bit of grease in a few places that I missed earlier. And also, don't forget the big O-ring that goes around the back of the flange. And that's it. We're finished.
That brings this lesson to a close. If you think this video was helpful, please click the like button or maybe even subscribe to my channel. Come back soon for more episodes. I also invite you to join me and my friends at therangerstation.com. It's a website featuring Ford Rangers and other Ranger-based vehicles, where you will find Ranger news, articles about members' vehicles, an active forums section, and an excellent tech library. Come join the fun. Thank you for watching Livy's Ranger Garage.